So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
Okay, so then we come to, or we are really led further in that descent. It's the divine descent now, the divine descent of mind, which is so apropos, as we've indicated, really, because at the point of science and divine science and of divine principle love, this is where we have found in our study, in our work, in our research through the years, that we get the value of that divine self-understanding that is indeed the Holy Ghost, that it has an impulsion within itself, the drive of the divine calculus, really to descend and to come and to influx. And I again refer you to the survey in the Four Levels book to refresh your memory of that and your tonalities of that. And there you would find that the divine principle love shows us now that divine science comes and breaks in on the further levels, and it is the influx, the input, the divine input for every further level. And we were just mentioning, that sense of fluctuation being perturbation, that the information principle is bringing to every discipline and every consciousness and every every part of our world, bringing the perturbation that is needed, you see, the fluctuation that is needed to overturn, to change, to turn over and throw over the old, that which has been outgrown and outworn and needs to be renewed and revitalized and reformed and changed in every way. That's what the Christ does as the Holy Ghost. And I already gave you that definition of the Holy Ghost, where we see that there is, what is going on is really the descent, the divine descent of life, truth, and love, which is the essential nature of that divine principle. That divine principle which it is itself eternal. Now, as it descends, it is going to develop that which is eternal. It's so beautiful. That's its office. So too, you see that sense of the Holy Ghost is telling us what the calculus is doing, what it is going to do. Picks up the whole calculus of divine science and says, this is the pneuma hagion, this is the holy wind, so to say. It's again what we have in Genesis 1:2, where it says, and the Spirit of God moved, you see. That's the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the deep, upon the waters. And when you look up the roots of it, of that term Holy Ghost, say for instance just a simple investigation of it or research of it in Strong's Concordance, you find that it ties right back to the pneuma hagion, that spirit ties right back to the pneuma hagion, to the Holy Ghost, so that it is the divine spirit that is moving. And moving really in its operational depth and its operational breadth, the breadth and depth of the calculus in its infinite translatability. It's really big. So you have that descent. And you know that when Max Kappeler would first present divine cybernetics, he would explain divine science as the divine self circuit of feedback, which then includes within itself, in other words, nested within that now, we are going to see that that which is divinely nested within that one divine science are the two further levels, or two further circuits of feedback, two further feedback systems, we could say. So the feedback system on the level of absolute Christian Science, which is just showing us again that the calculus is working there, and it is working in a very specific way now, adapted to that level, adapted to the questions that have to do with the relationship of principle to its individual ideas. And so it's working as an error preventative system. You know, this is the prophylactic art of Christian Science. Can just go back to so many things, but one has to press on, I think, and we just give a thumbnail sketch of these feedback systems within the one divine cybernetic system. So it is a feedback mechanism in absolute Christian Science that is error preventing. And on the level of Christian Science then, we see that there's a translation to that realm in which we are having to deal with the claim of error having taken form, having come into, established itself in some form, that claim, that belief, that supposition. And so on the level of Christian Science, it's working as a further feedback system, all nested within the divine self-feedback of the calculus in divine science. And that further feedback is the feedback of the error-correcting system, the error-correcting feedback. So that all of the mechanisms are there on the level of Christian Science, and really we would see that those mechanisms, quote unquote, are the laws. They are the laws of Christian Science. That those laws are the laws of the negative feedback principle that are regulating and bringing under control the claim, the suggestion that there could be anything operating but the one divine principle in its nature and operation and multidimensional manifestation. So we would really see Christian Science wants to show us, to prove to us, to demonstrate to us that there is nothing that is truly negative going on, that everything is God in operation. And so even when it says a negative feedback mechanism, doesn't mean that anything is negative. It only refers to the way the circuit works, and we would have to understand that terminology and the way the circuit works, and then we would see that everything is positive in the realm of divine cybernetics, which is the realm in which we live. And so on that level of Christian Science, you see that the four operate according to the flow of the calculus and the laws of the calculus there, the law of the Word, the law of the Christ, the law of Christianity, and the law of science. These are the means that are used to restore the system to a steady state. Whereas those mechanisms and those means that are inherent on the level of absolute Christian Science, which have all to do with the laws that we see there, the law of the Word, of life, truth, and love, the law of the Christ, of truth, life, and love, the law of Christianity as life and love, and the law of science as truth and love. These are the means that show us how the whole system of being is maintained in a constant dynamic flow, a continual dynamic flow. And that dynamic flow is called the homeorrhesa. Homeorrhesa. Homeorrhese. So we have the homeorrhesa. What is referred to as the homeorrhesa is meaning a steady flow of being, an uninterrupted flow of being, whereas on the level of Christian Science we seem to have these interruptions to the flow of being. We think they are, anyway. And the laws on the level of Christian Science restore our understanding to the understanding that nothing is ever really going on but the steady flow of being. So there is, on the level of Christian Science, really the job of those laws is to bring out or bring everything to the point of a homeostasis, a steady state, to return the steady state or to keep a steady state going. And that steady state is constantly being influxed by the homeorrhesa of absolute Christian Science, and that's really influxing us at every moment. So you always have the error-preventing circuitry governing the error-correcting circuitry. If you know about your laws of being, you know that that relationship is the relationship of interdependence. It's brought out through the laws of interdependence, the two levels of absolute Christian Science and Christian Science working together in a, what would you say, a way that we cannot fail to succeed. Well, it's a lot, and I hope you don't mind. I just don't think that I can help but bring in some of these things that have been the really, truly big points for us over the recent years, and to remind you that that's what we're looking at. Even when we ask these questions now about mind or about spirit or soul or whatever, that we can't help but to see that subject within the whole context of our understanding of the science of being, and it's a beautiful thing. And so, having come now to the point of divine science as science, we see this is the crucial point where there will be a tremendous inflow to the further levels. It's how principle understands itself through its idea and its calculus, and that idea now is going to be magnified as we come to the level of absolute Christian Science and begin to ask about the ideas of that principle. Coming to absolute Christian Science then, it is here that the pedal note is changing, the office changes, and in that descent we see now that any further question about that infinite idea that mind has of itself will be a question that is either from the level of absolute Christian Science or Christian Science. See, all further questions now belong to either one of those two remaining levels, because there is within the human that question, but what about, but what about this, what about that? How do you explain this? How do you explain that? And it's either going to be, but what about ideas? What about the fact that I need a specific idea? to answer a specific question. So it would be absolute Christian Science that would deal with that. Or it may be the other question that we have, the other what about question, and then comes in all the negativity, all the phenomena that we see in the world, all the problems, the present problem for the present day, and all the questions about me and what about me and my life and so forth. And they're wonderful, wonderful questions. What about my life? What about the direction of my life? What about my identity, my career, my family, my future? You know, all of these questions. And so then these will be questions that are answered primarily by the level of Christian Science. So there is that descent first to the level of absolute Christian Science. And absolute Christian Science is what? Again, all to do not with what? All to do not with the relationship of mind to mind's idea as a whole, not to the relationship of the divine principle to principle's idea as a whole, but it is all about the relationship of principle to individual ideas, to the individual idea. And so here it will be the relationship of mind to each individual idea. And this includes all ideas, all ideas. So what we see here now in our findings, it applies to all ideas. And so we're not just talking about the relationship of mind to mind's ideas, but to all ideas. And so it's the relationship of mind to spirit's ideas, soul's ideas, principle's ideas, the ideas of life, of truth, of love. You see? What we see here in our findings. And what is mind here as the word? Mind declares itself. Again, that's always the word sense, that we have a declaration. It is declaring itself. What does it say? What are you, mind, in relationship to each and every idea in creation? And mind says, I am the creator. I'm the creator of every idea, whether it's the idea of a love or an idea of principle or an idea of life or whatever idea it is. If it's idea, I'm the creator. Huh? Yeah. And that's my relationship, to be the creator of it, to be the producer of it. I produce every idea. I am the creative impulse of every idea that is coming forth under that influx of the Holy Ghost. I'm the creative impulse of it, which means that mind creates, it makes, it produces every idea. It's the cause of every idea. It's the first cause, really hearkening back to that sense that we saw, that idea that we saw in science itself, of the primeval, primordial conception, the mind being the first, being the basis, being in and of itself the conception of being. Now we see that when we ask about an individual idea, an individual creation within the whole of creation, that every idea actually comes forth from that basis, out of that basis, out from the basis of mind. We see that every idea is held eternally within the primordial conception of mind, mind being that conception, and that would be science itself. And then in divine science, being the infinite information of being, being the parent mind to its whole creation. And now here that relationship is a relationship to the single specific idea, and mind says, I am the first cause of that idea. First cause, the only cause, the cause of idea. So you have that causation of mind, the causative office of mind, mind being the origin, the author, the source of every idea. Do you hear a great statement of what mind says about itself in relationship to its individual creation? Yeah. And then we can ask a question about the Christ. What is mind as the Christ? What ideas express mind as the Christ in absolute Christian Science? And the Christ will tell us something about how that is operating, how it is working now, how mind is working and operating in relationship to every idea, how it is expressing that which it is as the Word, how it is realizing itself. I don't know if you recall that in absolute Christian Science, at the point of the Christ, that we have that sense of that it is here that being realizes itself, principle realizes itself as every idea that it is bringing forth is a realization of mind, of its creator. It's going to show us now an expression in that relationship of mind to mind's idea as an individual creation. And so what we have seen as the power of mind, the action of mind, the force of mind, becomes in relationship to each idea the creative power, you see, behind each idea. It's the creative power. So that creator is not just something that is but is static, is not moving, but it's moving, it's doing something, it's acting. That's the creative power, and it's the Christ then that qualifies that creator as having creative power to be what it is, to express itself as what it is. It's the creative power bringing to realization each idea. So you still have that creativity under consideration, because the whole question is about the relationship of individual idea to its creator, mind. And now the Christ says the creator is not static, but active, doing something, so it creative power. And mind is the mandate of every idea. It's mandating each idea. A lovely, beautiful sense of power and a touch of law in it, but that power of being the mandate, you see, of governing. It's an instance of having the governing power over each manifestation. Mind has the governing power over each manifestation of itself. And this is the relationship. It relates to each idea in a powerful way, in a way of requiring its idea to be what it is and to do what it does. An idea can't be anything else than what mind wants it to be, wills it to be. You see, that will of mind becomes a mandate to every idea that it be what it is and do what it must do. Can you hear? To be what it is, this is the word. To do what it must do, this is the Christ. We're always dealing with the categories, and we only need to recognize that, and it helps us so much in our understanding. So all of this is held really within that mind force that we saw in divine science. It's held by the attractive force. the adhesion, cohesion, and attraction of the mind force which is governing all action. Now we see that is a relationship that is individualized to the specific idea, to the individual idea, as a mandate, as an instance of the mandate of mind. This is the Christ, and it says, look at me, and there is a great, if we really look into that relationship of mind to mind's ideas in terms of there being something coming into expression, we see that the creator now isn't static, that producer isn't static, that origin isn't static, but it's dynamic, something that is in expression. And you see that there is a forming taking place, that mind forms each idea, it's shaping each idea. I wonder if you can hear that. It's a touch of the expression of the Creator. You see, to form each idea and shape it to be what it is, to fashion it, to model it as what it is in its individuality. And so mind is seen in its office as manifesting and being the manifester of every idea. It's a little more touch of the word, but that manifester is manifesting. Here is a Christ, the actual expressing of it, the doing of it, manifesting each idea, presenting each idea, imparting each idea, emanating ideas. You see, it's an active, living expressing of what mind is. These are all saying something really about the manifestation, the manifesting of the Christ, that it's an emanating activity, an issuing forth, a flowing forth, that ideas are that which are proceeding from mind, springing forth from mind, and that is the fact about each and every idea of mind, that it's the emanation of its origin and creator. And so then we would see the outcome of this at the point of Christianity. What is the outcome of the Word and the Christ? It's that what appears is idea. It's actually idea. That the outcome, the appearing, is idea itself, an idea. Ideas, individual ideas. An idea as the manifestation of mind. What appears is the manifestation of mind. What is mind manifesting, you see, as the Christ? It's manifesting idea. That's the manifestation of mind. So again, if I talk about the manifesting, I have a process sense, I have a Christ sense, and then I have an outcome from that manifesting, and that's the manifestation. That each idea is the full and complete manifestation of mind, the perfect emanation of mind, the perfect formation of mind. It is an image of mind. What did we have right above there? You see that the whole realm was bringing out the image of mind as the whole idea, the whole creation of mind. But here, where the focus is on individual ideas, each idea is an image of mind. It's a model of mind. So we have the result or outcome or output, really, that mind has made all. You know that wonderful statement that without the Word of God was not anything made that was made. You get the sense here that everything is made by mind. Everything exists fully complete as the emanation of mind, as the made of mind. Why? Why Christianity? It's always because of the Word and the Christ. And so really, mind at the point of outcome, at this point in absolute Christian Science, has made all and maintains and supports all that has been made. It holds all within itself, all that is made. So it's holding each idea within itself, maintaining each idea, supporting each idea, sustaining each idea. And I confide in you now that I really went back and forth as to whether these would be under the Christ, perhaps, these terms, maintaining, supporting, sustaining, because the ideas maintain and support have very much a power sense to them too. So in that synonymous term mind, where we have that idea of power, you could very well draw from that idea of power the sense of maintaining and supporting and sustaining. You know, when we have them appearing, we have those terms also appearing under the synonymous term life. And when you see them in respect to life, they have more of a sustaining, a holding, a maintaining, as a life-giving sense. So all these things come into play, all these different categories and tonalities of the categories come in, and all of that has to be sorted out. You have to weigh all of that. So you can make a little note of that, and you can ask yourself, well, what does my scientific tonality tell me? Is that a Christ tone, that as mind is emanating and issuing forth its ideas, it is also the power that is maintaining each idea, supporting each idea? Or you can see it from the standpoint of Christianity, which is really hinted at by the law of life and love on that level. And you see how you have so many things going on everywhere, really at each point of intersection in that design of being. Everything is going on everywhere, you see, going on at each point. So it's the great question of what is really being accentuated at that point. What's being accentuated as I take a particular orientation to the whole. And we're taking a particular orientation to the whole. So I have the whole just talking to me all the time and telling me everything about itself that's going on in consciousness. But the orientation, you see, that's the question. We have to be clear about that. Now my orientation is one of asking about the ideas of the 7 synonymous terms, not only in their dimensional structuring, but in their calculus structuring. Now, how much to bring in about the laws of life, truth, and love that appear on that level? This is a very delicate issue. It's an issue really that stopped me in my tracks for, well, a good week to 10 days until I sorted it out and became clearer about it. So we would see that we can really take these ideas from a different standpoint and weigh them in the light of the laws. The law of life, truth, and love, the law of truth, life and love, and truth and love. So how much does one depend on that? How much does one bring that in? And the question is, what is your goal? What is your goal? What are you trying to do, trying to see? And that we must be careful not to muddy that as much as possible, to be clear and to always return to our real purpose and our orientation to the system. Does that make sense? Yeah. And yet a little inkling of those laws comes through. It has to, because it's that point of intersection. And the law is pinpointing what's going on at that point of intersection. So I don't think we have to be too hard on ourselves. You see, to be a good scientist, we have to be flexible. We even have to be flexible with ourselves, forgiving with ourselves, you see. Yes, I think that these are the love qualities within the scientist, that we don't say, I have to know every last detail and I have to know it right now. I have to get it all right now. This is really not the attitude of the scientist, but to continually weigh and weigh and weigh. And you can only weigh if you love the idea, if you love the subject. You can only weigh properly, not with the academic mind or with the human mind, not with human thinking and human reasoning and ferreting out, humanly, doing human research. These things don't work. They don't belong to that weighing. But you see that we must weigh our subject with the love of that subject, love of the idea of science. So by loving your categories, you become one with them. That's the point. When you love something, you become one with it. And this becomes a terrific tool for the scientist of love within us. It's so different than trying to get something out of the subject, trying to get something from the subject. So love this idea, love your precious and beautiful categories of the science of being. So we come to the standpoint of science on the level of absolute Christian science. What is mind in relation to its creation as individual idea? And this is really now from the highest standpoint on that level. And we see that every individual idea, science says, every individual idea in its highest sense has a relationship to its principle as creator and individual creation being one. This is typically what science would do. It would bring everything to the conclusion of oneness. And so science will again explain word, Christ, Christianity, and say to us, they are one. And what ideas are bringing out that sense of the oneness of principle and its idea? It's a relationship of divine mind reading. You see, of mind knowing its own individual idea, its own individual ideas. Mind being a state of knowing itself as each idea of itself. Divine mind reading. And that quality is so important to us and within us in practice, that we can only know what the specific idea is. We can only know what the true individual idea is in any case through that quality of divine mind reading, of being one with the divine mind. Actually, we would see then that this has a great translating power, this fact of divine mind reading, of mind knowing its own ideas, that comes to us, will come to us on the level of Christian Science as being able to read as the divine mind reads. So again, science takes always the highest standpoint, and it will gather up the whole development, so to say, of the Word, and then moving from the Word to the Christ, from the Christ to Christianity. Science gathers that up and says, what is all that except an explanation of the fact, really, the eternal fact that Creator and individual creation are one. That's how mind would see it, you see. Mind as science, in absolute Christian science. That Creator, mind, and individual creation, idea, are one, or is one. And that this is really what we mean with divine mind reading, that mind knows every one of those ideas, every one of those individual ideas, knows it uniquely, knows it individually, knows exactly what it is. It has really made each one of those ideas. It's something like that.